Andrew D. Edwards. It's lovely to see you again. And I think did everybody get a chance to watch the interview, the recorded interview from before? Great. So what we want to do today is to give you guys a chance to actually speak yourselves with Andrew and about anything, you know, about his training, about his design process, about how he goes about juggling a life, working in the UK versus working in the US or in Europe or other places. How do you do that? How do you get those kind of jobs? So two of the people here, Andrew, Brooke and Sarah, were to be design assistants this summer. So
cool.
That's their track. The others were coming in on the staff. Carmela being the wardrobe supervisor. Christy, you know, Brianna, you've met. She's our coordinator for rentals and the stock. She manages the stock, which is huge. Anyway, and so here we are. So, Andrew, anything that you'd like to
kick off with?
say before we get started?
No, just to reiterate what you said, we can talk about anything and everything, and if I'll let you know if I don't want to mention it or talk about it. But I think that's the great thing about these things, is it's a great opportunity to share ideas and learn from each other, and that's what we didn't have the opportunity to do this summer. So let's just all have a nice time and talk about it.
Yeah. Okay, so does anybody have a question that they would like to start with? You can raise your hand, or you can, if you click on that participants button at the bottom, there usually is a raise hand function there. So you can raise your hand and I'll see it because I have it up here. Okay, Christy.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm so sad for the summer. Ugh.
I know. It's a bummer, as you guys say.
Yeah, it's a bummer. Super bummer. I guess I just wanted to ask, because I know you do a lot of opera, but what's your favorite thing to do? Do you do what type of shows do you do besides opera?
I mean, I started out doing plays, and actually opera's always been my ultimate journey goal to get to begin with. It's changed over the years, but it's still, international opera was always the goal. God, it's tricky because each medium has its own beautiful things about it. I love doing intimate small plays where it's just a couple of people in a small space where you feel you're really part of something. And you have that sort of, that intimacy with the piece. But then I also love doing the grand scale where the music of an opera connects with you. I like something I can get my teeth into, if that makes sense. I like a challenge with a piece of work, something that really needs to be designed or solved. When I was starting out, lots of people I often get plays which would be really tricky, like Act 1 and Act 2 or Scene 3 and 4 would just be complete spin on your head. How are we going to get from there to there? And I seem to sort of landed myself in that bubble for a while. But I've always enjoyed that sort of problem solving quality of a piece. I think those are the ones that I really connect with, if that makes sense. But then again, you know, it's how you design it. It can stay in a one white box for the whole night if you really wanted to. But I think something that allows itself for transitions more from a design point of view is where I like to play from a set point of view. And then I really love designing period shows. I sort of could pretend that I'm, you know, Mr. Modern Conceptual, set it on the moon guy, but I just love anything with some good tailoring that I can, you know, delve into the history books and look at references and sort of get excited by the old-fashioned techniques and old-fashioned clothes. Yeah, so those sort of projects really, but I don't have a, opera is my favorite because of what the intimacy of the music with it. And a little bit the grandeur, but more to do with the emotional connection that you can have with the music. You don't get that. I don't feel you get that. Well, you do get it from a musical, but I just think it's so much more personal for me. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. Have you designed in film or for dance?
I've never done dance, and it's something I would like to do. I'd love to do a ballet and some contemporary dance. My agent's trying to get me into it at the moment, or was. And I've never done a movie. I worked as an assistant on a movie when I first came out of college, like 20 years ago. I worked as an art department assistant on the film Closer. And that was really interesting, but it didn't excite me. I think I'd love to do costumes for film, but I don't think the idea of doing scenery for film does anything for me, unless it was like a sci-fi, then I'd be hooked. But that's my guilty pleasure. I love a bit of sci-fi. So yeah, give me a Hellboy or something like that, and I'll lap that up. But it's my other extreme. It's but I'd love to do like a big period costume film. But you can't predict when those opportunities are going to come up, and maybe they'll never come up. And but my experience of movies is you either start as an art department assistant and you work your way slowly up the ranks from to art what are they called now? Art director, and then on to production designer, or you take the other route, which is you connect with a good theatre director, and at some point they decide to go into movies and they bring you on board. But you can't really be sure where your path's going to go. But no movies yet. But we'll see.
Oh, it'll happen if you want.
Never know.
You want it to happen.
Mm.
Well.
Who's next?
Yeah. Who else has got a question? Brianna?
Hi, Andrew. I was wondering if you could talk about how you developed your style.
Ah, really? Hold on. What is my style? Would you say?
Well, I know you touched on it in the hour-long interview with Missy and Mike, and you say that you kind of, by working under other designers, you kind of find what your style is. So I was wondering if you could
expand on that.
Yeah.
Sure. It's really, I remember vividly when I was about a year and a half out of college, we have a prize over here called the Limby Prize, which is for young emerging designers, and you get down to a final 12, and then there's 4 different groups within that 12. And I was a finalist, but I didn't win. But off of that, I had an interview with a director called David Farr at the Bristol Old Vic. And I remember him sitting there going, and it was a real one of those wonderful chicken and egg experiences as a young designer. And he said, you need to go away and find your style. And once you find that, come on back. And it was like, but how am I going to find that if I don't get these opportunities? But that was frustrating. But then over the years, I was trying to develop it. And it wasn't until about 10 years ago when I was sort of put together a website that I suddenly looked through my images and found I created one. And I think it's very internal, your style. It's like the way you dress and, the way you cut your hair and who you are. It's in you. You just have to find the projects that allow you to slowly let it out of you. And I think mine are often very governed by light, or have been for the last few years. And I think they're moving into something else now. But I would say your style is inside you, and it's about finding those projects that bring it out of you at the right time with the right pieces, if that makes sense. And that's how I've developed mine. And then once I sort of grounded in it, I know how to move it and explore it. I remember having a conversation with a designer once, who an American designer who literally got asked by a director who'd seen one of his shows and gone, "I want that for this," and that must happen a lot. It's, you know, you get people see your work and go, "Okay, Andrew does that. We'll go to Andrew. We want that. We know what we're going to get, or a version of it." But it's, my style is something inside of me, and it's sort of, and it will change and it will evolve, and it's continuing to, you know, I think the design for Barber was a big turning point for me, to be able to do much more of a statement piece rather than the environment. And that's where I now want to push myself and challenge myself as I go forward. And I think that's the thing as an artist. You have to continue to evolve. And it may sound really corny, but one of the biggest influences when I was growing up and studying fine art was Picasso. And he continually challenged his style, and he continually evolved his style. And people like David Hockney have done the same. And Picasso had, I can't remember when it was, there was a year where he produced a different piece of work every year to push himself and challenge himself further, you know, because he felt like all the young kids were coming up behind him. He felt, I need to evolve, I need to change what I do and become something new. And I think you will, as an artist, you have to be aware of that as well. You know, and we have sort of spoke about it a bit in the interview. There's a reality that it's a job. We have to be hired, so we have to make ourselves fashionable at the times. And I think if you get set in old-fashioned ways, or you can only do certain things a certain way for a time before people don't get interested in anymore. So I think you have to evolve your style continually. Also, yeah. How's that? That makes sense?
Great.
So,
You touched on one point there, Andrew. You said that your work you felt was governed by light.
yeah.
Can you expound on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, it was about sculpting things. My early designs have always been very much having light integral to it. So within the architecture of a space, whether it be a cube with lights around the edges, or something with big windows, you could backlight and sculpt it. I think light for me really governs a space. So basically, it's basically creating an architectural environment or an architectural piece, which we can then use light to sculpt, rather than just trucks that come on or a front cloth. Or I think my designs are about environments or spaces which I think could be sculpted by light or have light integral to them. I'm never quite sure where that's come from, but there's something, I think it's the clean, where it started was with the clean lines and having those sort of sharp white sort of outlines to things I really found attractive on the eye. But I think having light within a practical light source within the design, rather than just relying on the lights above, is something which I just warm towards, I think.
Mm.
So it's a shame. One of the ideas for Barber, which we wanted to do, which we cut because of money, and I think it was just a bit frivolous, was to have the cage all lit up in rainbow lights, so we could have LEDs down each bar of the cage, so the whole thing could glow. But there was a real reality that also, I think Paul said to us, that when it turns round and Racina's in there, you'll just see the lights, you won't see her, you know, which is where you have to compromise design over storytelling. And remember that everybody's not just come to see your beautiful set, hopefully.
Aww.
They've come to see a thing called an opera and a performer on stage. But it's good to remember that. It's good to have, you know, production managers to bring you down a peg or two.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what I do too.
Yeah.
And it's part of that relationship between the tech departments and the designer, wherein like those of us that are here, we know the stage, we know what the lighting instruments are like, we know, and Randy, you can speak to this as well. we know what the wind is going to do, and we know what the rain is going to do because we're an outdoor theater. So, you know, all of that conversation, I think, is really important. Especially, it seems to me, especially when you come into a theater that has like a full-time crew, that you know, that we have a lot to contribute, just in terms of information to you as the designer. And sometimes, as you say, you just have to change.
Yeah. I mean, knowledge is, you know, that's an old-fashioned thing, but knowledge is power, and having as much information before you make your decisions can be really, really helpful. And especially in new venues when you haven't designed there before, you know nothing about how a space really, really works. And it's funny, I remember someone saying to me when I walked around there, did I find it daunting? I thought, it's a really odd question. It's like, I mean, I know it's a huge privilege to be working here, but it's you know, it's another space. I'll challenge it the same way I do any theatre. So I didn't find it daunting, because I also trusted that I'd be surrounded by people who knew it and would support me. It was, you know, but every space is different, and you have to respond to those spaces, and you have to rely on the people who are in the building, who know the system and the way it works. What we were saying in the interview is, you can go to different countries all around the world, and the passion's the same, but the system's different. You have to listen to the people you're surrounding yourself with to get the best out of that building, to realize what your design is, or to create your design. You know, I remember when I worked at Opera Comique in Paris, they have a back wall there of the theatre, which is absolutely one of those beautiful distressed brick walls with big warehouse shutter doors in it. It's sort of, and they say, you know, some people completely show this off. You know, feel free to use this, and it's sort of one of those tips of the trade. It's like, use this, it's sort of golden. I mean, I covered it up, but it's you know, but it's listening to local knowledge, and it's just you know, you have to, because you know, those are the things that I'll either push your design forward to be something more than it needs to be, or make you realize you can't do something, which then challenges it in another way. So, yeah.
Great. Carmela, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I have a question kind of about what you were talking about a little bit with balancing your own ideas and something like a classic like Barber of Seville, where there are so many productions that you can draw information from, and theaters that you've seen it performed in, and how you kind of allow your voice to come through ahead of the influences while still respecting what's come ahead of you. Yeah.
I, as a rule of thumb, rarely look back at any other productions. I just think it's, and which is weird actually, because Stephen, who I work with, he does, and so I will suggest something, and then he'll start prattling on about, oh, but we've done it like this, or there was a version of that where this happened, and I'm like, I'm not interested. We're going to do it our way, and we're going to do it better. So, you know, it's unless someone, you know, until that point, I turn up in the theatre and someone says, this was done last year, exactly the same. You know, you've hired me for my ideas, and I think I've got to respond to that piece the way I respond to anything, with my eyes focused on what I want it to be, and what my responses are. Because as we sort of breached on with style, it's sort of, you know, I've been hired for what my aesthetic is, and so I would expect that trust in the producer, and I have to trust in myself that I'm going to create something from inside here, which is what they want, and I'll get that right. But as a rule of thumb, I never go into looking at other people's designs, except when I do Shakespeare and there's like 50, 60 characters, and I'm like, oh, what is this person? Who are they? And so it's the odd time I do look at the odd Shakespeare costume just to go, oh, okay, that's how they've done that. It's you know, donkey ears and a hat, or how many times has Boston been done a certain way? And that's actually more of a reason to go, okay, there is no other way to do this, or okay, it's been done like that before, maybe I do need to rethink it. But for the big overall concept starting point, no, I don't delve into the archives. It's a dangerous game, I think, personally. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
I have a question.
go.
When well, Stephen worked here before, and did he talk to you about the company? And what kind of things would he tell you about the company?
He was in awe of it because we actually did a opera together up in Central City, which isn't a million miles away, about 2-3 years ago now. And when we were there, he was raving about Santa Fe and his experience down there. And just, it's more just sort of, you know, over drinks chat, just saying what a wonderful building it is, and, you know, the view's magnificent. And he was sort of saying how lovely it would be for us to work there, and, you know, the resources are great. It's sort of much more of a sort of a general sort of chat about what a, you know, what an exquisite opera house it is. And I sort of heard about it, and we just, I think he wrote, I do think he wrote to Robert shortly after that, but and then about 2 years later or a year later, we got the call. It was really interesting how that happened, but yeah, he spoke very highly of it.
Did he tell you that the props guy was crazy? That's what Randy's trying to find out.
I know, I can see where this question's going. It's sort of,
It was the first time I had worked with Stephen, and it was a great experience, and it was also very collaborative.
Yeah, and he is, and anybody in the props department is always going to have a great time with Stephen, because he's just Stephen Props Barlow, as he likes to call himself, and I am not that guy. I am like, let's get as little on stage as possible. So with him, he's literally in the rehearsal notes, which, just in case, I'm not sure most people know what they are, but from rehearsal room, we get a list of notes each day. And God, I read some of that stuff and I'm just like, no, please tell me he's not going down that road. And I do call him up after. If I see it in there like 2 or 3 times, then I know he's serious. So my rule of thumb is if it's been in the notes more than twice, it demands a phone call and a triple check before, you know, we pursue anything with it, you know. I mean, I have been turned up to production meetings where he's like, you know, I do really want that cut. And I'm like, no, it's coming. It is coming. And I haven't had a single conversation about it because I'm just really hoping it's going to go away. But, you know, things are solvable really quickly, aren't they, Randy?
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so they all go into panic mode, whereas we're going, yeah, well, we can fix this in, you know, 2 hours, but we just want to make sure you really want it before we're going to spend that money.
Yeah.
So, but no, he spoke. I do. When we did come to Santa Fe, and we had our first meeting afterwards, he was like, "Oh, they were brilliant last time. They'll do anything." So.
I just think it's always interesting to see the relationship, you know, as one director comes in and then they have a different designer, and how that relationship evolves in the process when you come out to work. And I just think it's a really great thing, because like you would go down and you would address the situation in rehearsal with Stephen right away, but not all the designers do that. Yeah, don't go right down to the director or
No, it totally depends. And I have directors I work with who I will not necessarily go straight to them. There's not many now, because also I think my confidence has grown. When I was starting out, I would be very much like, what they want, they get. But now I'm much more, you know, we've created this together. Let's have a conversation about it, because I don't agree with you. And and we listen to each other and discuss it. But it's one of the things I find difficult within the process of what we do is that we create, you know, a director and a designer, they create something beforehand and then we throw it into a rehearsal room. And if you're not present in that rehearsal room, in that process, you turn up once a week to the production meetings and everybody goes, well, this is what we're doing. And you're like, when did it change? When did we go in that direction? And why are we not really, you know, what's happened to this thing I created? And, you know, it's sort of keeping your hands on the reins for that. And I think it's why a lot of designers, I don't know what it's like in America, but over here are frustrated and think about directing, is because you want to have that control over things. But I do think it is really important to just address the problem up front and be honest about it, because then we can solve it, and, you know, otherwise they can drift, you know. But also, but going back to what I said earlier, you also learn from experience of knowing which notes are notes and which notes are just, you know, things that have gone, some of the, you know, stage managers written the notes and they're not really up for anything. You know, you just know to ignore it. And I've had that, and I've had other ones where I've gone to the director and gone, really, we're having that? And they're like, no, I just told them to put it in because I didn't want to upset the, you know, the lead actor. Right? So you have to, that's why you wait till it's in there a couple of times.
That's true.
Right though, isn't it?
It is true.
Very true.
Very true.
But that comes with experience. I think you just, until you really know to read those situations and read people. But it's interesting though, because we were talking about all this the other day, and for me, I only know my relationship with my directors. I don't know what it's like for you know, all the other director designer collaborations that you have come through the door, and whether they have good relationships or whether they're, you know, they never talk and they just literally meet in production meetings and don't see each other.
It changes the dynamic with the whole tech team, you know,
Yeah.
the relationship that the designer has with the director, because of that, those things happening. And some directors do a lot more changing in rehearsal than others do. You know, some have a vision and they don't sway, but others, and that's going to be driven in part by the actors or the singers, you know, they can and can't do, especially in opera, because you don't necessarily get the body types that you need to do certain things you may have been thinking about. So there, and the voice pretty much comes first. So opera has that kind of, but for us, it's always helpful if the designer has a good relationship with the director, because then we're making missteps.
There's
Or
nothing worse than building stuff and, you know, spending money in the wrong direction, you know, because you're just going to upset everybody and frustrate everybody, and for many different reasons. It's just people putting their time and love and effort into something which could have been put something useful, you know.
exactly.
So.
Kendall, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you notice like a difference in the way that American costume shops function versus European ones at all? Like, I have a milliner friend that says that he predominantly works in his own private studio, and he just goes to the theater or opera to pick up work and meet with the designer in person. Or do you see benefits or problems to either one of those?
I haven't, I completely get what you're saying. I haven't done costume in America. I've worked on a musical, apart from, I know I suppose the opera, that opera, and from my experience. But yes, you're right. In England, what we do is we, if we're in rehearsal somewhere, we'll hire a little room at the side of the rehearsal room, and all the makers will come and visit us. So they'll come in for a coffee and we'll talk about, so we'll give them the samples or the fabric and we'll talk through the designs. And then my costume supervisor will send them all the bolts of fabric or whatever they need, and the buttons and all those bits and pieces. They'll come in for a first fit-in. And then if we're lucky, we'll get a second fit-in. Predominantly, that will turn up that will turn up on the stage, and then we'll go from there. But my experience in America is it's been done in a shop, and like, I mean, in Central City, it was all done there in house, and it was just we went there and we worked there, and that was home for the month I was there, and it all just was created from there. In Broadway, when I was an assistant, I think I remember sort of being certain houses that you go to a certain house, and again they'll take on a bundle of the costumes and do it there. Each has its own benefits in many ways. I think against what it's saying, you embrace the system in the country that you're going to, and you can't reinvent the wheel. And I think that, you know, we have to learn what works and what doesn't. But yeah, I think you have to work around the different systems, but they are completely different in that sense. That you know, it's a lot of independent makers over here, which is something we're going through at the moment with the situation we're in. Is that there's a lot of independent makers just with no work, and you know, they're doing a lot of what you guys are doing in the costume shop of doing PPE stuff at the moment, but all for the love of it, not for the money, and just to be passionate about it because they're passionate about making things and trying to. That's the sort of the scary thing is that, you know, the theatre industry, although we're not being paid as freelancers and have no work right now, we're still trying to help our communities and our NHS and our health workers and our key workers because we just care about people, you know. But yeah, it's completely different. I don't have a favourite.
Oh, that was diplomatic. Well, yeah, and those of you who haven't worked like in New York, I haven't had that pleasure yet. And like Andrew says, even in the United States, there are different ways that we work. So, for example, here at Santa Fe, we have a big shop, but not all theaters have a big shop. And some of them have to rely on outside makers, tailors and drapers who work from home or have small studios. Or like when Christy and I met with Andrew in New York, we rented space in a professional costume shop, that's what Andrew was talking about more with the Broadway stuff and even off-Broadway, because they had a room where we could actually work, but they also build costumes. So they don't necessarily organize it. You know, that's really what your designer and assistant designer are doing. But it's kind of different all over. Most big opera houses in the States have their own shops. The Met, Seattle, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, will have their own costume shops, but they won't necessarily have their own scene shop. So, for instance, Chicago Lyric doesn't have a scene shop. They have a place where stuff comes in and once it's been built. So it's more rare. Wouldn't you say that's true, Mike? Unmute Mike there. Wouldn't you say that's true? I think it's much more common that a theater or opera house has a costume shop. And I think that's a lot to do with space.
Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, so many arts institutions in general, not just opera houses, have completely abandoned their scene shops in favor of jobbing things out to commercial shops, which in a way is good because most of those commercial shops are protected in terms of their labor, but you give up so much of your creative control and your ability to make changes on the fly or at the last minute. And so many spaces are, the set's done, it's in the theater, and it is what it is, and you got to deal with it. Whereas here, you know, we do have the flexibility to make probably major changes if need be, or major additions, you know, budget and time given.
Yeah, completely budget and time given, but you're completely right. You've got a much larger opportunity if you've got a full scale metal shop, carpentry shop, paint shop right on site. If those options are out, if they're not around the corner, you know, what you've got is a guy with a drill and a hammer and a chisel and a paintbrush. You know, that's the difference. But that's true also in Europe, though. I mean, at the Opera Comique in Paris, they still have a functioning costume house on site, but they don't have any scenery shop. All of the scenery gets farmed out. So it's very rare to find a theatre which has a full scenery, workshop fully working these days.
Mhm. Does the E&O, is there scene shop, is that all farmed out?
That's all farmed out. The Royal Opera House has a full costume shop. No, I think their scenery goes elsewhere then. Yeah, and most of the paint frames in London don't exist anymore. It's all quite scary. There's a huge workshop down in Plymouth, which is one of our biggest regional theatres, and in 2 days' time, everybody's about to be laid off indefinitely due to this, which is quite a scary thing. So it's there's a reality hit in this country at the moment that the arts is the theatre industry is in a bad way, because we've already lost one regional theatre to administration, and I think we're probably going to lose a few more before the end of the year. But it's the reality that it comes down to money somewhere along the line.
It is a shame.
Yeah.
And it's worldwide. We talked to the people with Opera Europa, and Royal Danish Theatre is going to open September 1st.
Wow.
Because they feel like that they're now comfortable. They've already started fittings, so they're already working.
Wow.
As is Stuttgart. They've changed their protocols, in the dressing rooms, and that's going to, I think, extend the time it takes to accomplish the same amount of work. However, Sophie said that they were comfortable. The artists are comfortable with with changes they've made and the delays they have between fitting something and then putting it on someone else or putting it out into the shop. So it is going to start to turn around, but here in the United States, we're not in a good place yet.
I think we're not either. We just have to wait and see with it all a little bit. But let's talk about process and other things instead.
Kim Bitso. Kim is our shop manager. Andrew,
Did we meet in New York?
We did, very briefly. So good to see you again virtually. You mentioned in the interview a little bit, and I was hoping that you could kind of dig a little further into your experience as an associate and assistant, and what some of the qualities are that you value in those folks as you work with them. As a designer, what are some things that you look for in a successful relationship with your associate or assistants?
Totally. Where to start with that? I think from a practical level, when dealing with sort of creating, it's having that great skill set. It's having people who are fantastic model makers, fantastic draftsmen, who can do things really quickly and just get and understand what I need when I need it. So, for example, if we're doing a white card, so a preliminary design for something, and knowing that actually what I want is just shapes and just quick bits of cardboard, and then when I want more detailed designs, they take it further than I could possibly ask, which I haven't. The people I've worked with recently just do. They push me with their model making skills, and I ask them to try and calm down a bit, because I just think we just like to be short to be making things in detail, but they're so about what they do, and it's their skill set. They're fantastic at it. So it's having people who are amazing at what they do, and the same with the drafting. I think speed is something also which I learned very early on, that I was always very aware as an associate when things took longer than they needed to. I think it's something we all probably suffer from, where you're doing a job which you think is going to take an afternoon, and you get to the end of the afternoon thinking you're not even close to getting it finished, and you're like going, oh my God, they're going to go mental at me if I don't get this done. And so, but I'm also, so working quickly is important, but I also understand things take a certain amount of time. And I often say to my assistants when they're panicking and going, I'm not going to get this done, I'm like, well, just take your time, get it right, and I'd rather people took their time and got things right the first time, rather than trying to rush through it and then we look at it and go, you know, we're going to have to remake that. But I think a good open dialogue, as I sort of brushed on sort of in the interview, saying I think it's important that if people aren't sure about something, they not raise their hand, but, you know, holler and we talk about it and we figure out a better way to solve it. Because, you know, it's like in a fitting or when I'm designing stuff or having stuff made, you know, I can be in a scenery shop and everybody can go, yeah, you drew it this way and you made the model this way and this doesn't quite work. So you're going to have to solve this. And, you know, sometimes you don't get those resolved in a piece of model making or in a design. And the designs are in my head, so, you know, you've got to ask as many questions as possible without, you know, being annoying. If that makes sense. But so I think, yeah, all of those, and also just I look for people that I just get on with. You know, I spend all my time with these people, and I need to trust them with my work and who I am, because at the end of the day, it's I'm working to deadlines and I'm often away a lot. So I want someone I can leave in my studio. And when I started out, it was in my house at times. So it's people I can literally bring them into my house after breakfast, shut the door on them, and say I'm out now for the rest of the day. So trust is a huge thing, and that goes down from having someone in your house to having someone in a theatre and representing you when you're not there. So it's people you connect with that you just know. It's sort of, I think, you know, when you meet someone, you know whether they're your sort of person or not, or whether there's a way you know you can steer them and help them and to get the best out of them. But yeah, does that sort of make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. I mean, I think everybody's different and everybody works to different things, but I think I always like to be open-minded. I hear of some designers who work with through other assistants who are like taskmasters and get frustrated and, you know, get people to remake things left, right, and centre. And I get all of that, but I like to have a happy environment to work in and accept people make mistakes, and, you know, it's all a learning curve and we're learning from each other. But I guess I must have learned along the line from working from other people. I definitely know from working from Christopher Oram, he was a very accepting designer who allowed us to make mistakes. And there was a rule in his studios that there's no such thing as a stupid question, which I think is such a great starting point for so many things. It's ask anything, you know, to the point that, you know, you could be doing Hamlet and you'd say, what's the guy, you know, I can't remember, is it set in Denmark? You know, you can ask the basic questions and nothing's wrong. You know, we've all got to learn from each other somehow.
Yeah. What process? Any other questions? Anybody else have a question or comment they'd like to make? Rebecca?
I was wondering about your rendering style. I noticed that your renderings for the Barber were digital. Are you doing more digital work lately? And if so, what software are you using or investigating?
Yeah, I always used to work on watercolor paper, and I always used to have a good 2 or 3 evenings or maybe a week where I would spread everything out and all my books. So I'd do all the research beforehand, and then I would just start drawing. And I'm always, more so in the digital, I make more mistakes. But when I was working in pen ink, I would rarely go back and change things. It happened, but I found it was less. But I now, about 2 years ago, I got an iPad Pro just before they then changed them to these really nice new ones. And I used an app called Procreate. And I started using that thinking this will never work and I can draw with a, you know, iPencil, be anything like using a real pencil and a real set of watercolors. And I was amazed actually how convenient it was. You know, from simple things like always being able to have the same template for your figure and your outline, just a starting point as a layer, which you can then just, rather than what I used to do, which is hold one sheet of paper over the computer screen and use as a light box to draw around one behind, you know, it's a window or, you know, on the TV or whatever light source you had. You know, we all held it awkwardly at an angle point and try to use the pencil, which can't get any pressure against the paper, and, you know. But now I use an iPad, and also because I travel so much, it makes sense to be able to be having a coffee and sketch out either a set idea or a costume idea, or go back to a costume I've already done and work on it further. I've actually found I put more detail into my costumes now and just continue to rub things out and put layers on and change it and use different tools. And I'm still discovering it. Sort of, you know, it's a bit like when you use Photoshop and you use like 10% of its capability, you know that actually if you went and had some classes, I'd probably have to do all these wonderful, you know, illustrations, but I can't. And I know that within the tool set of what's there on Procreate, there's all the other pencil options, Wig and Water and Ripple and things, which actually also are fantastic. And it's continued to evolve also as a tool. They're still updating it and upgrading it. And I get stopped by people in cafes all the time, exactly the same question of, what is that? What do you do? Would you recommend it? And the answer is always yes, yes, definitely yes. It's a great tool for you know, for set and costume. You know, and it's great. And you can also pull fabric swatches down off the internet and patterns and, you know, copy and paste. It's like a modern collage tool for that. You know, I remember when I first started out, I would tear up the Sunday supplements and, you know, find a picture or a color in there and then stick it down with some glue and then paint on top of it and have some chalk. And it's, you know, I learned that that's not a quick way to actually be productive. You know, it's a lovely way to evolve your design, but you suddenly realize that when you've got to do 40 costumes, you don't want to be tearing up bits of paper and sticking them down. I mean, some people do, but I don't, you know.
You miss that?
Do I miss it?
Yeah. Do you miss drawing, or do you still draw just for your artistry?
Yeah, I still draw. I'm never happier than when I have a pen and a piece of paper in my hand. I'm just trying to find a picture to show you something. Did I put it on my phone? Yeah, I still draw. This is what I did the other night. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? It's like hold on.
Like a cowboy.
Cowboy sitting on a mountain looking out at the view.
Oh, that could be New Mexico.
Yeah, could be. But yeah, I'm drawing a lot, and I went through the whole process of what I do. I'm never happy than when I'm doing the drawings. That's why I think about where I want to go in the future. Is sort of, I'd love to do something more with clothes and figure out what that is. Yeah, I don't know, but I love drawing clothes that connect to people. Just something just about it. So I think I've rambled on a lot. Does that answer your question, Rebecca?
That's good. Anybody else have a question? Christy, Brianna, guys, Mike, Randy, you got any questions?
And
Okay. Yeah, Brianna.
Okay. In your career thus far, what words of wisdom can you share with people that are just entering this industry?
Wow, that's a good one. I think being open is a really good tool. Being open to, in the sense that, and it's something I learned years ago, and I don't know if I went over it in the interview or not. By open, I mean being open to self-criticism is, I think, what I'm getting at. We all make mistakes, and no one's perfect, and we have to accept that our idea is not always the best idea. And you should sort of be willing to throw your ideas. I'm not saying your ideas aren't right, and other people can, but I think being able to adapt, being able to evolve, and being able to admit when somebody has a better idea than you, and embrace that rather than fight it, is a really valuable tool within what we do. And I was really fortunate that when I was 18, I had a one-to-one art teacher who taught me what self-criticism was. And rather than getting angry when they like it, I would ask why and try and find how to move it forward and evolve what I've done rather than get upset by it. And don't get me wrong, I still get upset by some things, but I think that's one thing. And I think don't take it all too seriously. It's, it is a job and it is real, but my God, we're so lucky to do what we do and work with the people we work with. There's so many people out there tied to desks, shuffling paper around, whereas we get to make things and see things and come up with crazy ideas and, see those realized. And we're so fortunate for that everybody always turns around and goes, I wish I did a job where I could, it must be so rewarding seeing that on stage. I'm like, yeah, it is actually. It's great. I get to, realize my ideas and thousands of people get to watch it. And it's tough to get there, but it's such an enjoyable process. And the people you work with are so enjoyable, so beautiful that you meet along the way. Even in hard times, it's worth sticking at it and find a way to sort of get through it. So, but keep smiling about it because it's really fun. It's tough, but it's worth it. So don't take it too seriously. Be open-minded. Don't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, I think those would be my pearls of wisdom. And never be far away from a martini. It's always a good one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good advice just for life, to be able to be self-critical and to appreciate where you are and what you're doing, and that
I think
collaboration.
You hit the nail on the head. I think that's the nail on the head, though. Is that this is life. It's sort of we pick jobs which are us. Other people pick jobs which they go and do and then go home to their life. I don't know how to switch off the two, and that's that's the industry through and through. There may be the odd person who is, but not very good at attaching the two because it's us. We as self-employed people, we put ourselves on the line and we go for an interview and we're judged, and you're continually selling yourself. But it's your ideas, what's going on inside your head. So when you put your work down, you continue to care about it and it ticks at the back of your mind. So it's your life. I think that's why it makes sense to me. I don't see the line between the two. Maybe the advice should be find the line between the two and have a bit more of a life and less of theatre. But yeah, that's where the martini bit comes in.
Hey, Brandon.
Hi, sorry to join late. We just got done with our mentoring session, so sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Do you have Brandon is the head of the crafts area.
I can tell.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's a puppeteer. He's a builder of puppets and stuff. When you need that, you go to.
And I know exactly where to go now.
Yeah. Brandon, do you have a question you'd like to ask Andrew?
You have to now. You have to.
I have to. How are you today? How about that?
I'm great. The weather's really peachy out here, or it's down here, across here.
Well, nice to meet you. Sorry to be late.
No problem at all.
Did you finish your studio, by the way, Andrew?
No, I've got the. So I'm building myself a studio at the moment because due to the sort of the times that we're in over here, I can't afford my studio anymore. So I decided to build one in my garden, which is 6 meters by 3 meters, and it's a timber frame. So I've laid a concrete slab, and then I've built the timber walls. And at the moment I put the breathable membrane on, that's on now. So I'm now, and I did the roof yesterday, so I felt like, I felt like an episode of Shawshank where I sat on the roof and had a beer at the end of it in the sunshine. So I felt like I earned that. And then, yeah, next is to put the corrugated black walls. I think they're ready for. They all think I'm going to do some nice local cedar clad thing, but no. So yeah, that's what I'm up to. I'm homeschooling and building a new design studio for when the doors reopen to all the theatres across the world. So it's better to be ready for it.
Well, does anybody else have any questions for Andrew? Mike, you and Randy? Oh, Christy.
I guess I'll ask. One of the questions that I'm going to ask you that I hate getting asked myself. So.
Right?
Yeah. A lot of people like to know, and they ask a lot about what, something in your design or in the past that you've done that has gone incredibly wrong or incredibly right on stage. So is there anything that you have that's interesting or that you want to share with us?
That's gone incredibly wrong. I mean, I had someone fall down I did a Perspex floor once for this design, which had these doors that opened on the side, and an actor did just literally walk straight into it and went down a 6-foot hole, probably like an 8-foot hole, which went really wrong. He was all right. He was absolutely fine. He was there 1 minute and then he wasn't there the next, and that was slightly worrying. But the show looked great, so I was sort of, that's probably not the right approach, is it? I'm not sure. But no, I try not to make too many mistakes online. They happen, but if we're very lucky, we catch them before they get out of hand. Usually by brilliant workshops who look at my technical drawings and say, what have you done there? That's just not right at all. So that's usually where I make my mistakes, can be in my sheet work. I think as an assistant, I do remember now when I was sat in the back of a theatre in Chicago for Spamalot, I got asked to draw up a small cart for a joke where a bale of hay went across the stage, and I absolutely drawed it 4 times bigger than it needed to be, and it turned up in the theatre. Now I remember. Yeah, it got resolved, but it was a learning curve as a young assistant to go. That was a few $1,000s down the drain. But they had loads of money on Broadway.
Well, sometimes it's not your fault. Sometimes.
Thanks, Missy. It was my fault. I just got scales wrong. It was my first time actually drafting for a show, and I'd done it all on computer, and I think I must have clicked the wrong button or done something. But hands up, I got it wrong. didn't get shouted at, and I guess that's one of the things I learned along through my sort of apprenticeships. Is the designer just went, "Don't worry about it. It's, you know, you've made a mistake. People make mistakes. Let's just make a new one."
Yeah, that's great.
Anybody else got a bad story to tell?
Yeah, but not in public. I think we've all probably experienced, either through our direct action or someone else, you know, some production we've been working on where something can go wrong. I mean, even not even just funny stuff, but, you know, someone falling in the pit, or, you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that happens. But I think that coming away from those kinds of situations, and one of the things that I can say without a doubt about working in the entertainment business is that I have always been encouraged by the people that I worked for to keep moving up, you know, like in the middle of a job, especially in film, you know, in the middle of a job, if a better job came along, people were always encouraging, as you say, about making a mistake, because we make mistakes. And I think one of the reasons that I embrace this industry is because of that. You just keep going on. You just keep moving forward. Make a mistake, and you just, you know, you don't have time to place blame. You don't have time for any of that. And I think it's one of the great things about working with all of us.
Yeah. I was gonna say, go on. Yeah, I think you're right though. It's sort of my first, and I don't know if I said it in the interview, but that's where I got my first job, was in the back of that theatre in Chicago, when the production manager said to me, "We need someone in the UK," and I said, "I can do it." And they went, "Have you done it?" And I went, "No, but I can." And he went, "Get on with it." And I think that's the thing. And I've heard this from, you know, what I call the real world as well, but I think there's a lot of people today in the real world who go, "Why haven't I had my promotion? Why am I, you know, it's been a year. I'll be moved up to this job title and this pay packet." And it's like, you only get, I think, you move forward in life with the opportunities you make for yourself. So you need to open that door and show someone you're capable of doing something. And then they suddenly go, "Oh my God, did they do that? Let's give them a chance." Or, you know, you have to shine, you know, and show your strengths. And then that's how you move forward. You create the jobs which weren't there before. So, you know, you always want to be doing a job that you want to be promoted into, like for 6 months, and then suddenly go, "Why have we not given this person that job before?" And I think that's sort of also going back to your question, Kim, about associates. You know, we have associates and assistants over here, and it's the assistants who are doing that work where you suddenly go, "Well, she needs to be my full-time associate now," because they're just already there and they're doing the things I need them to do before I've even asked for it. And I think that's why I got the work I got as an associate, is because I was reading the designer ahead of schedule, and, you know, yeah. But I think you're right though. That's how you move forward, is by making those doors open for you.
Yeah, that's a good observation.
Yeah, well done you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, you see the job. There's no mystery about the job.
No.
But you have to be observant enough and confident enough to move forward on your own. It does take a lot of courage. I will say.
Take the leap. But if you take the leap, you can swim. It's worth it. You just, you know, paddle faster underneath and look like you know what you're doing on top. And then if it means going home and calling all your friends going, "What the hell does that mean?" Or running out and getting coffee and calling someone, you know, it happens to us all. I mean, a friend of mine put me forward for a music thing, and I'm like, I've got no idea how the music industry works, how you do a bus and truck tour or something like that. And I sort of steered away from it, because I was like, you know, I can't turn up and meet that sort of level of artist and not know what I'm doing. But you know, you have to have the courage to call people and go, how do I do it? How are we going to do this? Because your friends will support you, and you know, and your colleagues will as well.
Yeah.
If they don't, they're not good friends.
Well, we're running out of time. So does anyone else have a question that they would like to pose or comment from anybody? It was Andrew. Thank you once again. You
My pleasure.
star in your crown. But it's
If
lovely.
anybody wants to,
What?
if anybody ever wants to email me or ask me things, you know, the door's always open as well, because I'm not going to reply straight away, but I do try and, you know, reply to anybody who does email and have questions.
That's great. That's very, very kind of you.
Or look at things stuff. There's a kid who's at Welsh College, which is a college over here, who's contacted me recently and asked me to look through their portfolio and website and stuff. So, you know, I think it's what we should be doing as designers, is supporting other people coming up through the ranks. So please feel free.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that the apprentices do when they're here during the summer. It's one of the things that they're missing is we have a portfolio fair, and they're invited to bring their portfolios, and then we invite people from the community, people from the opera, people from all over come in and chat and look at people's work. So it's one of the things that we're missing a little bit because we've been canceled, is that opportunity to have somebody look at your work and talk to you frankly about it. So that's very generous to offer that.
The door's open, so.
That's great.
I mean, you may not want it.
Anyway, so thanks again. We'll be signing off, and it was lovely to see all of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your days and sticking with us. And Brandon, I want to hear about your thing yesterday, how that went. So we'll talk. Anyway, Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew D. Edwards, who is the designer for the Barber that we were meant to do this year, but we will be doing it. I think it's going to be a great session. It's great to see you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Lovely to meet you all. Bye.